The floating palace hung above the clouds, its towers shining like gold in the morning sun. Inside, the Dragon King sat on his massive throne, wings folded behind him, eyes sharp like burning embers. He was proud, fierce, and feared by all. But today even he looked uneasy. His son, Silverwing, lay in a crystal bed at the center of the hall, pale and still. The young dragon had been paralyzed for weeks after a mysterious accident, and no dragon healer had been able to help him. Many dragons had tried. They used fire magic, healing crystals, and powerful chants, but nothing worked. Silverwing could not move his wings or tail, and even blinking was a struggle. The Dragon King's roar had echoed through the palace for days, demanding a solution. Yet nothing changed. The king paced angrily, his scales glittering, his tail lashing in frustration. Outside the hall, a small figure watched quietly. She was a human maid, named Alara, who had served in the palace for many years. Humans were weak, fragile, and easily frightened, the dragons often said. They believed a human could never do anything important in a dragon's world. But Alara had a secret. She had studied dragons for years. She had watched their ways, learned their habits, and understood something the dragons could not. Sometimes patience and gentle hands could do what power could not. Alara stepped into the hall. The courtiers hissed in surprise. A human? One whispered. She dares enter the Dragon King's throne room? The Dragon King turned his eyes toward her. They burned with suspicion. Why are you here, human? Do you think you can help where my finest healers have failed? His voice was deep and rumbling, like thunder rolling across mountains. Alara bowed her head. Your Majesty, I do not have magic like a dragon. I cannot promise miracles. But I believe I can help your son. The court erupted in murmurs. Many dragons shook their heads. Humans could not even lift heavy objects without effort, let alone heal a dragon prince. Some laughed quietly. But the king's eyes narrowed. There was something different about this human. She was calm, steady, and her voice carried no fear. You may approach, the king said slowly, though his tone carried warning. But touch him and I swear, if you fail you will regret it. Alara nodded and stepped closer to Silverwing. The young dragon's golden eyes fluttered weakly, looking at her. He made no sound, but his small heart beat faster when he saw her gentle face. Humans were small, warm, and soft. He did not know why, but he felt safe. Alara knelt beside the crystal bed. She spoke softly, her words like a gentle breeze. Hello, little one, she said. I'm Alara. I'm here to help you. She placed her hands lightly on his arms and wings. They were warm and soft. She did not grab, she did not push. She simply held him and let him feel her calm presence. The dragons around the hall watched, tense. None dared move closer. Many could not understand how such a small human could even touch a dragon prince without fear. But Alara did not falter. She breathed slowly, spoke slowly, and allowed Silverwing's body to relax. Minutes passed and something remarkable began to happen. Silverwing twitched his tiny claws. His tail moved slightly. Alara's hands were steady, encouraging him without forcing. Slowly, painfully, the young dragon tried to lift his wings. They did not rise fully, but even the smallest movement made the Dragon King's heart skip a beat. You dare? The king whispered, astonished. His pride and fury mixed with something he had not felt before, hope. Alara looked up, meeting his gaze. Dragons are strong, your majesty. But strength is not only in fire or claws. Sometimes, it is in care, patience, and trust. I believe your son can move again if he feels safe. The king turned his eyes back to Silverwing. The young dragon's wings twitched again, a little stronger this time. The court gasped. No dragon had ever dared touch the prince in this way. None had ever dared to believe he could recover without magic. Alara whispered softly, encouraging the small movements. That's it, yes, good. You're doing it. The king could not look away. His son's eyes were brighter now, his tiny body trying to move with the human's help. He realized something he had never understood. Humans were fragile, yes, but in their fragility, there was courage and skill dragons rarely possessed. Minutes passed like hours, and still Alara worked quietly, patiently. Sweat ran down her face, but she did not stop. Every small movement of Silverwing brought a flutter of hope to the Dragon King's chest. For the first time in many days he did not feel anger or fear. He felt something new. Finally, Silverwing lifted one wing just a little higher. His tiny claws curled around Alara's hands. The hall was silent. Even the most skeptical dragons watched, wide-eyed, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Dragon King swallowed hard. He could not speak. All his pride, all his anger seemed to fade. For the first time, A human had done something no dragon could. And he realized, slowly, that the story of his empire might never be the same again. Elara smiled gently at Silverwing. "You're stronger than you know," she whispered. "And we'll keep going together." The king's heart, long locked in pride and fire, felt a crack. He did not yet know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. The human maid had changed the rules of his world forever. Elara stayed by Silverwing's side as the sun climbed higher over the floating palace. The young dragon lay in the crystal bed, his golden eyes following her every move. He could not yet move well, but the tiniest twitch of his wings or tail seemed like a victory. Elara smiled gently, her hands never leaving him. "You're doing so well," she whispered. "Just a little more." The Dragon King sat on his throne, watching silently. He had never been so still in his life. His scales, usually shining with pride, seemed dull compared to the wonder unfolding before him. He had seen dragons heal with fire, with magic, even with powerful artifacts, but never with human hands alone. The realization made him uneasy and curious all at once. Elara took a deep breath. She had observed dragons for years, but working with one so young and fragile was different. She had no magic, no super strength. She had only patience, care, and knowledge of how to move gently, encourage slowly, and let the body relax. It was not about forcing the dragon to move, it was about helping Silverwing find courage inside himself. "Try to lift your wings, little one," she said softly. "I'm right here. You're safe." Silverwing's eyes blinked slowly. He trembled as if unsure, but then he nudged his right wing slightly upward. It was not much, but to Elara it was a sign. She adjusted her hands, supporting him without pushing. Her touch was careful, like a feather on a flame. The court around them was silent. Dragons whispered quietly, some in disbelief, others in fear. They had never seen a human touch a dragon prince in this way. Some dragons' jaws dropped. Some leaned forward, unable to look away. The air was thick with tension, curiosity, and awe. The Dragon King's heart thumped loudly. His son's wing moved again, a little higher this time. And then the left wing twitched. Elara's face lit up. "Yes, that's it. You can do it." Silverwing tried again, pushing a little more. His tail swished, a tiny smile appeared on his face, and for the first time in weeks he seemed alive. The Dragon King could not believe his eyes. No dragon healer had achieved this in days, yet this human, fragile and small, was slowly helping his child move. Elara's hands guided him gently, lifting him carefully so he could stretch his wings without strain. "That's perfect," she said softly. "One step at a time. You're stronger than you think." For the first time, Silverwing tried to sit up, leaning slightly on Elara. His movements were shaky and uneven, but he did not fall. Elara supported him, whispering words of encouragement. Her voice was calm and steady, filled with warmth. It was not a dragon's voice. It was human. And it seemed to reach something deep inside Silverwing. The Dragon King leaned forward. Pride mixed with amazement as he watched his son struggle, then succeed, under the human's care. For a long moment he could not speak. Humans were fragile, weak, and limited, but this small human had touched his son, given him hope, and inspired courage where dragons had failed. Minutes passed like hours. Slowly, Silverwing began to lift both wings slightly. Elara's hands supported him, her strength gentle but steady. "Yes, that's it. Keep going," she whispered. "You can do it." Some dragons in the court muttered that the human might be using secret magic. Others argued that it was impossible. But the Dragon King knew the truth: it was not magic. It was patience, care, and understanding, qualities he had rarely seen in dragons, even among his most loyal guards. Elara smiled at Silverwing. "See? You can move. You are strong. You just need to believe in yourself." Silverwing blinked slowly. He tried to move his wings again, this time lifting them slightly higher. His tail flicked with excitement and a soft, delighted roar escaped his throat. It was weak, but it was a sound of life, a sound that filled the hall with hope. The Dragon King felt something he had not felt in centuries: humility. His son, his pride, had been helpless. And yet here was a human, small and delicate, showing him that greatness could come in forms he had never imagined. Elara encouraged Silverwing to stretch a little more, holding his body gently as he struggled. "That's it," she said softly. "One step at a time. You're doing so well." The young dragon's eyes shone brighter. He blinked at her and seemed to understand something. He had trusted her. He had felt her care. And slowly he began to move a little more freely, supported entirely by a human's hands. The Dragon King could not speak. He could only watch in awe. His pride, his power, his magic, it had not healed his son. But a human had. And he realized in that moment that the world might be larger than he had ever imagined. Elara stayed with Silverwing all morning, guiding his movements, whispering encouragement, letting him stretch, lift, and try again. Slowly, painfully, the young dragon's body began to respond. Small muscles that had lain dormant for weeks began to move. Wings twitched. Claws flexed. Even his tail swayed with life. The hall was silent except for the soft sounds of Silverwing's attempts and Elara's gentle voice. Dragons watched, stunned, as a human showed them something new, that strength was not only in fire, claws, or wings, but also in patience, care, and courage. The Dragon King leaned back in his throne, feeling a mix of wonder, pride, and humility. He did not yet know how far this human could go. But one thing was certain. The human Maid had begun something that would change his world forever. Silverwing's wings twitched again, this time with more strength. Elara's hands guided him carefully, supporting his small body as he tried to lift them higher. Every movement, no matter how tiny, brought a spark of hope to the Dragon King. He had watched dragons of immense power fail to heal his son, yet here was a human, fragile and small, performing what seemed impossible. The young dragon's golden eyes followed Elara closely. He felt her warmth and her steady hands, and for the first time in weeks he began to believe he could move again. The human did not rush him or scold him. She simply held him, whispered encouragement, and let him discover his own strength. "Good, just like that," Elara murmured. "You can do it. I'm right here." Silverwing pushed harder, trying to lift his wings fully. One rose slowly, trembling at the tip. The other followed, barely a few inches, but it was enough to make the Dragon King's heart skip. He had never seen such determination. It was not the kind of force dragons were known for, it was something quieter, stronger in its own way. The hall was still. Even the court dared not interrupt. Some dragons whispered nervously among themselves, but most watched in silence. A human guiding a dragon prince to movement was unheard of. Many could not understand it. They were proud, powerful, and stubborn creatures. And yet, the evidence was before their eyes. Silverwing was moving. The young dragon's tail swayed slightly and his claws flexed. His tiny body shivered and a small roar escaped him, soft but full of life. Elara held him steady. "Yes, that's it. Keep going. You're doing so well," she said. The Dragon King leaned forward, eyes wide. He realized something important. His pride and power had limits. He had thought dragons could solve every problem with strength, magic, and fire. But this human had none of those things, and yet she was succeeding. It was a lesson in humility he had not expected to learn. Minutes passed, and Silverwing began to lift both wings more evenly. Elara adjusted her hands constantly, letting him stretch without strain. The small movements grew stronger, and the young dragon's body responded more quickly than before. Each tiny success brought a ripple of astonishment through the court. "See? You are stronger than you know," Elara whispered. "Believe in yourself." The Dragon King's chest tightened. Pride had always been his guide, but now he felt something new, wonder. He watched as his son's wings lifted higher and higher. The fragile human's patience and courage had unlocked something inside Silverwing. He had not just been paralyzed physically, he had been trapped in fear and doubt. And now, with a human's help, he was learning to move again. Elara guided Silverwing carefully to sit up. His legs wobbled and he nearly fell, but she steadied him instantly. "There you go," she said softly. "You're doing it." Silverwing blinked at her and gave a small, trembling roar. The sound was weak, but it filled the hall with hope. It was the first roar he had made since the accident. The Dragon King felt his chest tighten. His son was alive, moving and responding. And it was because of a human. The young dragon began to lift his wings in small flaps. They were uneven and shaky, but each movement was more confident than the last. Elara encouraged him every step of the way, her voice calm and steady. She let him feel his own strength, guiding without forcing, inspiring without commanding. The Dragon King realized the truth. Humans were different from dragons, yes, but in their difference lay their strength. They could see the world in ways dragons could not. They could teach patience, hope, and courage. They could inspire action not by force but by belief and care. Silverwing's movements grew stronger with each passing moment. He lifted his wings fully, shaking with effort but holding steady. Elara's hands supported him gently, letting him balance. A soft, proud roar escaped him, louder this time. The court gasped. Never before had a dragon prince moved like this without the aid of magic or power. The Dragon King felt something he had never felt before, awe and humility. He realized that his son's recovery was not just about strength or fire. It was about care, patience, and trust. It was about the courage to believe in someone else, even a human, even someone so small. Elara smiled at Silverwing. Yes, that's it. You are amazing. Keep going. The young dragon flapped his wings a few times, testing his strength. He rose slightly off the crystal bed, wobbly but flying, supported by his own determination and the human's guidance. The Dragon King's eyes glistened. His son was moving. He was alive. And it was because of her. Some dragons in the court whispered that this was a miracle. Others could not believe what they were seeing. But the Dragon King knew the truth. It was not magic. It was human courage, human patience, and the simple act of care. Silverwing's eyes shone with life, and his tiny claws gripped Elara's hands. She held him close, smiling proudly. You see? You can do it, she said. You are stronger than you think. The Dragon King leaned back, chest heavy with awe. He realized that the world was bigger and more surprising than he had ever imagined. A human, fragile and small, had done what dragons could not. And in doing so she had changed his son, and him, forever. The hall was silent, filled with wonder. Dragons watched, some fearful, some amazed. But all understood one thing: humans were not weak. They were something different. Something extraordinary. And that difference could change even the mightiest of dragons. The hall was quiet. Silverwing hovered slightly above the crystal bed, his wings flapping weakly but steadily. His small claws gripped Elara's hands as she guided him, encouraging every movement. The Dragon King's eyes followed every motion, filled with a mix of awe, pride, and something unfamiliar, doubt. He had always believed dragons were the strongest, the wisest, and the most capable. But now, watching a human teach his son to fly, he realized his understanding of strength might be wrong. Dragons in the court whispered nervously. Some were angry, believing it was a disgrace to allow a human to touch a dragon prince. Others were amazed and uncertain, unable to hide their curiosity. The air was thick with tension. No one had ever seen anything like this. The Dragon King rose slowly from his throne, his massive wings stretching wide. Every step he took echoed through the hall. He stopped near the crystal bed, his eyes fixed on Silverwing. Explain to me, he said in a deep, rumbling voice. How does a human manage what dragons cannot? Speak. Elara looked up, calm but steady. Your Majesty, it is not power or magic, she said softly. It is patience, care, and trust. Silverwing needed someone to believe in him, to guide him without force, and to show him that he could move. That is what I have done. The Dragon King's pride bristled at first. He had ruled an empire for centuries, commanding respect and fear. Yet he could not deny what he saw. His son's wings flapped, his body moved, and he was alive because of a human's guidance. A quiet realization began to grow in his mind. Perhaps strength was not only in fire or claws, but also in heart and courage. Silverwing looked at his father and then at Elara. He tried to flap his wings higher, and Elara steadied him. Yes, that's it. Keep going, she encouraged. The young dragon's eyes glimmered with pride. For the first time he felt capable. The Dragon King's chest tightened. He thought about the healers who had failed, about the spells and rituals that had not worked. He thought about his own pride, which had kept him from seeing a human as more than weak. Now that pride felt heavy on his shoulders, like a weight he could not lift. He took a deep breath and then another. The court watched silently as the king's expression softened. His eyes, usually sharp and fiery, now held something else: respect. He stepped closer to Elara and Silverwing. Human, he said slowly, you have shown courage and wisdom that even I did not expect. My son is alive and moving because of your care. That is something dragons cannot do alone. Some dragons gasped. Others whispered angrily. How could the Dragon King praise a human? How could he admit that their power and knowledge were not enough? But the king ignored them. His focus was on his son and the human who had saved him. Elara bowed her head. Your Majesty, I only did what I could. Silverwing has the strength inside him. I simply helped him find it. The Dragon King knelt slightly beside the crystal bed. His massive claws rested on the floor, careful not to touch Silverwing. I see now, he said, voice low and steady. Humans are not weak. They are different. And sometimes different is stronger than raw power. You have changed my understanding, human. Silverwing stretched his wings fully for the first time. They shook, but he held them steady. A soft roar escaped him, proud and full of life. The Dragon King's heart swelled. He had feared losing his son, feared that nothing could bring him back. And now he realized that courage and care, even from a human, could achieve miracles. Elara smiled, helping Silverwing land safely back on the crystal bed. "You did it," she whispered. "See what you can do when you believe in yourself?" The Dragon King looked around at the court. Many dragons seemed unsettled, unsure of how to react. But he did not care. What mattered was clear. His son had healed in a way dragons could not, and a human had taught him to believe in himself. That was more valuable than any magic, artifact, or fire. He turned back to Elara. "You will remain in my court," he declared. "Not as a servant but as a guide, a teacher, and a friend. Your courage and skill are unmatched. You have earned a place beside dragons, human." Elara's eyes widened. She had never expected this honor. She bowed deeply. "I am grateful, Your Majesty," she said softly. "I will do my best to help Silverwing and serve your court well." The Dragon King smiled faintly. Pride still burned within him, but now it was tempered with understanding. He had learned something new. Strength was not only in power or fire, but also in trust, care, and courage. A human had shown him that truth. Silverwing climbed onto his father's shoulder, testing his wings and giving a small happy roar. The king placed a claw gently on his son's back. "You are stronger than I knew," he said, voice quiet but filled with emotion. "And now I understand, strength comes in many forms." The court remained silent, watching the Dragon King and his son. They realized that something had shifted. The rules of the empire, the pride of dragons, and the place of humans were all changing. A small human maid had not only healed the prince, she had changed the Dragon King's heart, and perhaps the fate of the entire dragon empire. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon King felt something he had rarely felt: humility. And he knew, deep down, that his choices from this day forward would be guided not only by pride and power, but by the courage and heart he had witnessed in a human. The palace was quiet now, but it felt alive in a way it had never been before. Silverwing flapped his wings proudly, testing the strength he had gained. He hovered above the crystal bed, his golden eyes bright, shining with joy and confidence. The Dragon King watched him closely, a mixture of pride and wonder on his massive face. Elara stood beside Silverwing, smiling softly. She had guided him through every small movement, every tiny stretch, and now she could finally see him grow strong. Her hands were still warm and steady, though she no longer needed to support him fully. The young dragon had learned to trust himself, and in doing so he had found his own strength. The Dragon King stepped closer, careful not to frighten Silverwing. "Look at you," he said, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "Flying on your own. You've grown stronger than I imagined." Silverwing let out a happy roar, flapping his wings once more. He circled the hall, hovering near the king. Then he landed lightly on his father's shoulder, tiny claws gripping gently. The Dragon King's heart felt heavy with emotion. For weeks he had feared losing his son. And now he realized something incredible. A human had given his child hope, strength, and courage. Elara bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, Silverwing has always had strength inside him," she said softly. "I only helped him see it. Humans and dragons are different, but we can learn from each other. Together we can achieve things neither could do alone." The king looked around at his court. The dragons were silent, watching, trying to understand what had happened. Some were proud, some were skeptical, and some were amazed. The world of dragons was changing, whether they liked it or not. The presence of a human had shifted everything. He turned back to Elara. "You will remain in this palace, not merely as a servant, but as a guide and protector of my son," he said. "You have proven that courage, care, and wisdom are as important as strength and fire. You have earned your place among dragons." Elara's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. She bowed deeply. "I will do my best, Your Majesty," she said humbly. "I will guide Silverwing and I will help in any way I can." The Dragon King smiled faintly. He had learned a lesson that no magic, no ancient artifact, no fire could teach him. Strength was not only in the claws or the wings of a dragon. It was in courage, patience, care, and trust, qualities humans possessed in ways dragons often overlooked. Silverwing flapped his wings again, rising higher this time, circling above the hall. "Look at him," the king said quietly. "He flies." The court erupted in murmurs. Some dragons whispered in awe, some in fear, but all understood the truth. Humans were not weak. They could teach, inspire, and even change the course of dragons' lives. And in this hall, for the first time, a human had done exactly that. The Dragon King placed a massive claw on his son's back gently. "You are strong," he said, voice low and proud. "Stronger than I knew. And together we will face the future differently. You and your human guide have shown me that courage and care are just as mighty as fire and strength. Elara smiled at the king. She had expected nothing in return. She had only wanted to help the young dragon. But now she realized something. The Dragon King had changed. Not just in words but in heart. And that change could ripple across the empire. Silverwing flew higher, then landed beside her. His tiny claws brushed her hands, a small gesture of thanks. She laughed softly, her heart full of warmth. The bond between human and dragon had grown stronger than anyone could have imagined. The king stepped back, watching silently. He realized the world was larger and more surprising than he had believed. Humans were not merely fragile beings. They were capable of bravery, wisdom, and change. And in that realization he felt hope, not only for his son but for the future of dragons and humans alike. Word of the human maid who healed the dragon prince spread quickly. Other dragons whispered about her courage. Some doubted, some mocked, but many began to reconsider their view of humans. A small human had done what dragons could not, teaching a lesson in humility, care, and courage. Elara watched Silverwing fly higher and higher, her smile bright. "You can do anything," she said gently. "You just need to believe in yourself." The Dragon King's eyes softened. He had ruled with fire and fear for centuries, but now he understood something new. Leadership was not only about power, it was also about wisdom, understanding, and recognizing courage in unexpected places. A human had shown him that. Silverwing landed again, this time beside his father. The king lowered his massive head and nudged his son gently. "We are stronger together," he said quietly. "Dragons and humans, learning from each other. That is our future." Elara bowed her head. "I will always be here to help," she said. "And Silverwing will always grow stronger." The Dragon King watched the young dragon flapping his wings with joy, the human beside him guiding him. He realized the palace would never be the same again. Strength could no longer be measured by fire or claws alone. Courage, patience, care, and trust had proven themselves mighty. And it was a human who had taught him this lesson. The king smiled faintly, his pride mixed with newfound respect. He understood that the empire's future was changing. Dragons and humans could work together, learn from each other, and achieve things no one had ever imagined. And in that moment, the Dragon King, his son, and the human maid all knew the same truth. Greatness is not bound by species. It is found in courage, care, and the willingness to believe in one another. The palace, once quiet and proud, now felt alive with possibility. The Dragon King's heart, long locked in fire and authority, was finally open. And the human maid had left her mark, not just on Silverwing but on the Dragon Empire itself.